Welcome to Behind the Research, where we go behind the latest research from the Journal of Financial Planning. I'm Ben Lewis, and today I'm joined by Dr. Stuart Heckman, the PhD Program Director at Texas Tech University School of Financial Planning. Stuart, along with Sonia Luter, Michael Collins, Emily Kuschel, and Teresa Matthews, authored the latest research in the February issue of the Journal of Financial Planning titled Retirement Savings Heuristics and Perceptions of Retirement Income Adequacy. This study evaluates whether a simple savings to income multiple heuristic can predict how individuals perceive the adequacy of their retirement income. Using 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances data, results show that the SIM ratio closely tracks subjective feelings of preparedness, making it a practical and accessible planning tool. The findings suggest that this heuristic could improve consumer confidence and support more intuitive retirement guidance. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore what inspired this research and how you can apply it to your work with your clients. Thanks for joining me, Stuart, and welcome to Behind the Research.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to see you. And I know, obviously, Texas Tech, we got to do a quick guns up for our friend Dennis Moore. Have to do it. He'll appreciate that.
Of course.
So anyway, listen, let's start with the why behind the research. What were you seeing in the profession or the broader landscape that made you and your co-authors believe this research was needed?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, my colleagues and I are involved with the CFP Board's Financial Planning Longitudinal Study, the Client Impact Study. And as we were working on that project, we really needed a measure of retirement adequacy that did not involve asking 1,000 questions. If you're And there are great papers out there that try to estimate the adequacy of people's savings and preparations for retirement, and they need a lot of information. We're making lots of assumptions over long periods. We need information about all their assets and everything. And we don't have space in the survey to ask that level of questions. And even if you had a lot of it, you still have to make tons of assumptions about growth rates and inflation and everything. And so we were really wondering, if we just have a couple of inputs, basically somebody's age and their income, can we get a rough idea of how much they should have set aside in savings in order to be prepared for retirement? And so it brought to mind these really simple heuristic kind of guidelines that Fidelity has a good example. And so we started with these that just have benchmarks about how much you should have saved at certain ages. And we said, does this track with people's confidence and their ability to retire? And so the Survey of Consumer Finances has enough information to be able to calculate the ratio, kind of determine whether or not somebody seems to be on track, and then really just wanted to use that as a way to validate, if somebody seems like they're on track in this sense, are they more confident in their retirement preparations? And so,
Sure.
So we really just wanted a quick take on whether or not somebody feels good about how they've prepared, really with a very few inputs from the household. And we thought, this could be a really helpful tool, especially for younger households that have a long ways to retirement. We don't need to get into 1,000 assumptions about their savings trajectory. It's like, very simplistically, are we more or less on track? Do we need to increase? Do we need to decrease?
Interesting. I mean, as you guys were engaging in the research, did you guys stumble upon any surprises, anything that kind of came out of left field that you were like, wow, that's interesting?
I mean, frankly, I was a little bit surprised that just being on track or not did correlate to the extent that it did with people's confidence in retirement. That's a pretty crude measure. Are you above this target or below this target? And showing that has some predictive power in how they feel about their preparations. I mean, frankly, that was fairly surprising because it seems like we would need to know a lot more information, and that just wasn't the case. So that was a bit surprising.
Yeah. So one of the things we like to do with these behind the research conversations is kind of identify the practical application of the research. Again, Journal of Financial Planning readers, largely FPA members, they're practicing planners. So, I'm interested in kind of your perspective on what you most hope FPA members are going to take away from the research and be able to apply to what they're actually doing with clients.
Yeah, I think it's possible that especially for folks that are far away from retirement. You don't necessarily have to use these as the benchmark measures,
Hmm.
but the general idea that you could establish a really high level goal and break it down into key benchmarks along the way, and just use that as a really simple map to help somebody get to their goals. I think that is really the big takeaway. There's lots of research from judgment decision making and psychology that say the more simple we can make decisions,
Hmm.
the better. People are a lot more likely to follow through on the behavior and actually make better decisions, more informed decisions. And so that I think that it feels maybe a little too simplistic to just give a single number and say, aim for this by the time you're this age or about here. But I think that's honestly what clients and consumers need, and it's what is helpful for their behavior. And then as we get closer to retirement, now retirement's a couple of years out, or next year, that's where I think the software and all the detailed assumptions, we're
Hmm.
probably a lot closer to the true scenario at that point. We
Right.
don't have to make, big assumptions that are going to be compounded over 20 and 40 years. And that's where, the software can be very helpful. But, especially for longer time periods, longer time horizons until retirement, these really simple tools can be very helpful. So whether it's, this set of benchmarks or something very similar, it'd be very easy just to pick a number and work backwards from that and develop some benchmarks just so that somebody has a general sense of whether they're on track or they need to increase savings or something like that.
That's great. That's great. I want to bring up the little QR code here for everyone can go. And first of all, for you, Stuart, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Behind the Research. I really appreciate it. And I just want to point out for all of you that you can dig into this exciting new research in the February issue of the Journal of Financial Planning, which is now available to all FPA members. You can just simply scan that little QR code, kind of point over there. You can scan that QR code on the screen, or you can visit simply fpajournal.org. That's fpajournal.org. And again, Stuart, thank you so much for joining us on Behind the Research. And thank you to all of you for spending a few minutes with us. We'll see you next time on Behind the Research.